We're ready whenever you are, Mayor Mayhew.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill. Council, it's good to see everyone. Each and every one of you. Deputy Mayor, how are you this evening? Mike, I'm glad to see you. You're the last one in. And Arnie, it's always a delight to see you. And thank you, staff, for being with us this evening. We will call the meeting to order. It's 7 o'clock. Today's meeting is being held as a virtual meeting due to the declared emergency. This meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded and published on the Southwest Middlesex YouTube channel. Council, before we ask for disclosure of pecuniary interest, we will acknowledge that we are gathering on the land upon which we meet as the traditional territory of First Nations people. We convey our respect and thank them for their contributions to our culture, community, and our past and future partnerships. Does any member of council declare a pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Yes, Councillor Cowell and Councillor Choi, thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. And I have been apprised of the conflict there, and I'll make note of that. Thank you. Council number 3 on the agenda. Any additions or errors? Council, if you would, I would like to move the bylaws, that the bylaws would precede the closed session just to accommodate the public and staff. Any objection to that? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt the agenda with the bylaws preceding the closed session. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Cowell, Councillor Vink. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Council, the consent agenda is next on our items to do business with. I'll read these briefly. And if there's any that you wish to pull out, we certainly will move them to a new business and discuss them at length. Or if it's just a minor inquiry, please raise your hand and we may deal with it expeditiously at this moment. 5A, February 9th meeting minutes. 5B, Southwest Middlesex vouchers. 5C, the January building report. 5D, resolution from Township of Limerick regarding the gypsy moth. Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd like that pulled out, please.
Okay. .5E, resolution of Mallory Town. Their request and support for dissolving Ontario Land Tribunal. Yes, Councillor Cowell.
It is the same as the resolution for Halton Hills, and I would like them pulled out and supported later on, please.
Okay, 5E and 5F. And resolution of Township of Clearview regarding bridges and culverts. .5H.
Could we pull that Clearview one out so we can
Yes,
support
certainly
it?
can. Yes, Mark, I didn't see your hand there. 5G. Mark McGill. Okay, and we have Township of Bracebridge regarding insurance. Councillor Cowell, you wish that pulled out?
Yes, please.
Planning Act updates and changes from the province. Township of Dawn Euphemia Fire Committee meeting. Yes, Martin, would you like that pulled out?
Yes, I would.
And 5K, a request for a breakdown in the Integrity Commissioner's bill. It has been circulated. Yes, Martin, you wish this pulled out?
Yes, Mayor Allen, or I can just make a quick comment on it.
Okay, Martin, I'll remind you that the request was made to how much the bill was. And I just caution council that it is every councillor's right to ask for the assistance of an integrity commissioner. It's in the act and it is their prerogative. That being said, it's up to all of us to make sure that we conduct ourselves in such a manner that we don't spend taxpayers' money, or that, you know, our decisions are carefully monitored, that we don't. But every councillor has a right for this. But Martin, I'll let you make your comment. Go ahead, but just be cautionary of any of those concerns I've expressed. Thank you, Martin. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my only comment is that I just want the public to know that the Integrity Commissioner costs $13,924.43. Hard-earned money that taxpayers have to pay.
Okay, that's it then. It is part of our vouchers and we have to pay it. But I call council, the chair has mentioned it on several occasions. We all want to be cognizant of how we spend taxpayers' money. So let our behavior dictate that. 5I, or 5L rather, Minister Rickford. We've got the, regarding the gypsy moth. And the last one, interesting report on community improvement. It was nice to see the pictures in that. So yes, Councillor Scholdice, question on 5M?
We're on the community improvement, are we?
Yes, we are.
Okay, yeah, I just had one question. I don't know whether you wanted to address it later.
We can deal with it now, Mike. No, we can deal with it now. It'll be expeditious, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. I guess last year the county supported the implementation of this program by offering 50% funding up to $20,000. Before I continue on, I just wondered if I could get confirmation on that. Is that correct?
Okay, and if Kristen is on the Kristen, I'm going to bring you off mute if you can answer Mike's question here.
Sorry. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
It is subsidized by the county. Thank you, Mike, for that question.
Thank you. So this year they have reduced this amount to $6,500, and we are being asked to increase the budget to $29,000. Why are we not decreasing this amount due to the county offering less funding this year instead of increasing it?
Yeah, that's a discussion. That's seems more than a question, but and I'm not sure whether Kristen is that question should be directed to Kristen or administration as a whole. But Kristen, there's a carryover in that fund that is in that amount, is there not, from the last year?
The new year is a separate budget.
Separate budget. Okay, there's no carryover amounts in that. Okay, all right. Would you feel comfortable addressing Councillor Scholdice's question?
I think that might not be just a purely financial question. So I might leave that up to Jill, and I know Councillor Cowell has her hand up.
Okay, I alluded to that. I see Councillor Cowell's comment. If this is going to take time, we're going to move it to new business. Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
It's my understanding that the county did not provide funding for the actual grants. They've provided funding for the development of the CIP. Because the CIP is so extensive and reviews what other communities are doing and the legalities around what we are doing, the county actually paid for the CIP process. And the CIP process has a public meeting component. And so there are quite a few expenses with developing a CIP CIP plan. In the 2021 budget discussions, we as a council actually set aside $20,000 for the projects. However, the county actually paid for the process of developing the CIP program.
Okay, Jill, do you want to come in here to the conversation so that we can close it in any manner, or has it been addressed?
Yeah, hear you, Mayor Mayhew. Yeah, that's my understanding as well, is that the county helped to pay for the process of developing the CIP. So that's for the funding, and the budget was approved by Southwest Middlesex Council for $20,000. And there is certainly additional attention being paid by the county to help support these type of investments across the region. But I think that Councillor Cowell's correct in that the budget is being proposed and was accepted by council for $20,000. There's an additional amount left over remaining, so it could carry over, plus the amount for the Invest in Middlesex funding. But we can try to follow up and make sure that's all correct ahead of time. But I think that's addressed in the report as well.
Okay, thank you. Just if I could just mention to council, I've mentioned it in the past, I urge all councillors of the 3 wards to prospect for candidates for this money. You know, if you see a business, please, that could possibly use some of this money, and there may be some visual improvements that can be made, just as constructive advice to your constituent. Please advise of them. And in Ward 1 and Ward 3, those councillors should do some prospecting on that. And if you see some people that can use the money, please don't hesitate to drop off the information to them and urge them to put an application in. We are going to
I had one more question, Alan.
Yes, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I just wondered, what is the deadline for this year for businesses to apply for this?
There was a deadline, I think, today on the first one. Is that not correct, or, Jill? When was the deadline for application for the CIPC for this round?
Yeah, it was earlier this week.
Yeah, okay.
So, okay.
All right. Yes, Councillor Cow.
I just wanted to point out that on page 2 of the report, it specifically says that February 21st, 2022 is the application deadline. It is directly in the report.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. I'll accept the motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of 5D, 5E, 5F, 5G, 5H, and 5I. May I have a motion? Councillor Scholdice, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Questions? Yes, Councillor Vinke, question? Martin, you're on mute there. Just hit your mute button.
Sorry, Mayor Mayhew, twice. I think you missed 5J, or I'm sorry, 5J.
Okay, 5J.
When
Okay,
you went over the numbers.
get that in there. Okay.
Fire committee meeting.
Yep, okay. Yeah, all righty. Thank you, Martin. 5J, we'll add it in the list. It's almost the whole consent agenda and the new business council, but that's good. We'll have some healthy discussion. All in favor of the adoption of the balance, please raise your hand. Carried. Jill, we move on to item number 6, Committee of Adjustment. There is none, I believe.
Correct.
And we are now into 7 public meetings. And on our agenda is the building fee and service charges. It's we are required to have a public meeting, and it has been posted. And I'm pleased to say there have been no concerns expressed at the present time. We have in our company, Arnie, of course, and the author of the report, Glenn, that I'll ask Jill to introduce in a few minutes. This has been recommended by that joint committee of North Middlesex, Adelaide, Metcalfe, and Southwest Middlesex are partners in common in many ways in terms of their structure and their demographic, their agricultural mix. And as I say, this is somewhat a responsibility upon us to capture the money that we pay out as a municipality. And I have used an example in the past that if I build a structure and pay for a building permit, it shouldn't go on Mark's tax levy or Krista's tax levy. It should be financed by me solely. And so this fee schedule is presented to council to ensure that we have a cost recovery system. Jill, I'd be very pleased to hand it over to you now and introduce the two people who will be speaking to this. And Arnie, we well know, but your introduction would be appreciated to both Arnie and Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. So yes, we very much welcome both Arnie Marsman, who serves as our CBO, and Glenn Tunnick, who was engaged by Adelaide Metcalfe, North Middlesex, and Southwest Middlesex to undertake a review. And he is no stranger to the process, having completed this in many other jurisdictions as well. I understand he's definitely worked as a CBO in his day, as well as working with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Is that correct, Glenn? As
Correct,
well. Yeah. And it's worked in Eastern Ontario and this a little further in Southwestern Ontario, but we're really pleased to have him here. And he has done a tremendous amount of work in diving through with 3 municipalities. So we appreciate all of his efforts. And Arnie has been, of course, of great assistance in helping us review those as well for both us and the joint committee. So as the mayor noted, this was presented to the joint committee, which is made up of the mayors of each of those 3 municipalities and recommended for consideration by each local council. We just happen to be the first ones, but the other 2 are going next week, I believe. So maybe I will turn it over to Glenn to kick off his report.
Thank you, Glenn. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jill, and thank you very much, Mayor Mayhew and members of council. It's indeed a pleasure to meet with you virtually. It would be nice to be there in person, but it's the I guess the era that we're faced with. I hearken to the mayor's comment about the fact that the average taxpayer should not bear the cost of private sector application. In this case, is a building permit. That the taxpayer at large should not pay for the cost of the building inspection service. And in fact, that is the whole essence of the study that I undertook for the Joint Building Group, is to provide a full cost recovery financial model. It's the model that I have developed over the last, actually since 2005, when I first started doing these studies, done them all across the province. As Jill pointed out, I was a chief building official, but my principal function has been that of a land use planner. I've had a business for some 30 odd years, providing land use planning services throughout Ontario in terms of the consulting business. So this evening, I'd like to provide a bit of a presentation. And Arnie, are we, or Jill, do we have the PowerPoint presentation that you can pull up for this presentation?
Sure. Would you like me to run the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, I would. I'll just ask you to advance the slides as we go through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the first slide, and I've essentially gone through the introduction, so we can probably move to the next slide. This is in fact, a building permit fee review that I undertook for the 3 municipalities, and it was a bit of a unique experience because it was for 3 municipalities contemporarily. And actually involves a 4th municipality, Central Middlesex, and Arnie's operation, which he has offered and offers for the benefit of the other 3 municipalities. Well, my mandate was to review the building permit fee schedule from the past bylaws, to review permit volumes, that's building permit volumes for the period of 2015 to 2020. The reason for that 5-year period is to look at trends in building permit activity, because you often do get valleys and hills or mountains, if you wish, in terms of trends over time. Then to update the fees to reflect the current costs using the 2021 budgets for each of the 3 municipalities, including your own, and to recommend a new fee schedule that reflected the scope of the services offered using, as I've indicated, the full cost recovery financial model, so that the taxpayer at large in your municipality is not subsidizing the cost of the building service that's provided. And finally, to provide input to the update of the building bylaw. Next slide, please. So the legislative framework, or the enabling authority for the work that I undertook, is the Building Code Act itself. It was changed back in 2005 or thereabouts, because there was unfortunately abuse of the fee structure. Municipalities were using fees derived from building permits for other purposes in the municipality, maintenance of roads and who knows what. So the province felt that was unreasonable. They modified the legislation, and under 7.2, the total fees were required not to exceed the anticipated reasonable costs to administer and enforce the act. So there is some latitude that's offered to municipalities in determining what is reasonable. But to give you an indication of what is unreasonable in looking at the council costs associated with the service, is if I included the costs of your elections, that is to say, and you're going to have them later this year. Well, that's not a cost that's really related to building permit fees, so that's not reasonable. So reasonable costs are really the costs of doing business in terms of the building inspection service. And under 7.6, public notice is required, and a meeting is required for proposed change in fees or new fees. Next slide, please. So the general intent of the legislation is to ensure accountability. That is to say, to provide to the public a report such as what I did, to show how the fees were calculated, so it's absolutely transparent to the building industry and to municipalities as to how the fees were derived. And in this case, to provide full cost recovery. Now, having said that this is a full cost recovery model, none of the municipalities is required to adopt the full cost if they don't so choose to do so. They could charge less in terms of the fees if they felt that was appropriate. And there's a couple of variations you're going to see later in the presentation about that particular matter. But the full cost recovery model is intended to cover the costs of the building department or building service in this case, and related support services. That's services that are provided by other departments within the municipality to the building function. And certainly to require full public disclosure for the fees and any changes in fees and any new fees that are proposed. Next slide, please. So the methodology, similar to the mandate that I talked about, was to review the building permit activity for a 5-year period, or it's roughly 6-year period, to review the building inspection process. That is the process that Arnie and his staff undertake to receive permits through to the final sign off on occupancy. To conduct a time allocation assessment for staff. That means to say how much time did they spend doing inspections, how much time did they spend on administration, on the review plans, how much time did the finance administrator spend on preparing the budget related to the building service. To then calculate the indirect and direct costs, and I'll get into that in a little more detail, but the indirect costs essentially are the costs of the support services provided to the building service, and the direct costs of the building service itself. to calculate the building permit fees that are designed to recover the costs of providing the service, and then to calculate adjustments to the fee structure, including additions to the cost stabilization reserve fund. And that's a fund that is enabled by the legislation to allow municipalities to set surplus fees aside to cover off situations where there may be a need for a capital expenditure on, say, a vehicle that's provided for the building inspection service, or to offset those valleys, if you wish, in building permit activity when the revenues from fees don't cover the operational costs of the building service. Next slide, please. So this is the building permit, sorry, the building process, if you wish, building permit process, and it's fairly typical in your municipalities, very similar to what goes on elsewhere in Ontario. Phase one is the application submission, and most of this process now is electronic, thanks to the incentive initiative of Arnie and his staff. It makes it a much better process because applications are expedited, therefore approvals are expedited. Then there's the application review, which is essentially looking at the building plans that are submitted, the building drawings that are submitted for dwellings, for accessory buildings, or for commercial industrial projects. And the review is undertaken to ensure compliance with the Building Code Act. Then there's the issuance of the permit itself, which triggers the authority for whoever's affected to commence construction. And probably what's the most important phase of the process is inspections, because that's where people get value for money. That's where they get the assurance that what is being built is safe, is sound, meets the requirements of the building code. Next slide, please. So in designing the fee structure, the first step is to calculate the indirect costs, and these are the costs, as I said, of the support services that are provided to the building service. So that's the administration and enforcement costs, and I'll get into a bit more detail on that. Then to calculate the direct costs for the building service itself. So 1 + 2 equals the total costs. And then to allocate those costs across the various types of building permits that are issued. Next slide, please. So the indirect costs are the operating and capital costs of all building permit related services that are provided by other municipal departments, in this case to the joint building group. So this is the treasurer or the finance officer preparing the budget, being responsible for procurement of supplies that are required, and ensuring that the paychecks are issued to the various officials affected. And essentially, as I've said before, it includes everything that's a part of the cost of doing business to support the building administration and enforcement function. Next slide. So in your particular circumstances, this involves the services of council. Council are the penultimate manager of the process, being responsible for the hiring of staff or engaging in contracts with other municipalities to provide those services, and to certainly make decisions on the adoption of the building bylaw and the enforcement of the building bylaw. The CAO Clerk's department is also responsible for a management function, managing the various departments to ensure that they are cooperative and collaborate with the services provided by the building department or the building service, the joint building service in this case. And probably one of the most important functions is finance, because the money flows in from the building permit fees and then flows out to provide coverage for the cost of the types of services that are provided. And so that's all about budget, all about financing and ensuring that the revenues are allocated proportionally to the services, the support services. So a certain percentage would go to the HR function, certain percentage to the CAO clerk function. And the HR function is pretty much a given as well. We depend on personnel to provide the service, and in this case, it's Arnie's operation. Now, this is a sample of, much of this presentation is a high-level presentation. I'm not going to get into detail with all the different departments and so forth, but this is intended to give you a sample of a fee cost calculation for the finance officer. So what we look at is the percentage of time that's spent on the building-related duties times the number of hours per year times the salary / benefits and overhead. The finance officer was calculated to spend about 2% of his time, which amounts to about 36.4 hours in the course of a year, times the salary and benefits, which equals about $2,420.10. And what we've done is we've aggregated these costs across the 3 municipalities so that what is ultimately collected as a permit fee covers the appropriate costs for each of the 3 municipalities. Next slide, please. So the total indirect costs, if you recall the pie chart affair that I showed earlier, it shows the various departments that were involved for which these calculations were done. So the costs of council providing the support services and the management function amounted to $2,111.61. And yes, we calculated it to the penny as best as we could. CAO, $16,420, HR, $26,87 and change, finance, $16,000, heat, light, water on top of that, and building maintenance on top of that. So the $44,498 is intended to be representative of all those support costs provided by the 3 municipalities to Arnie's operation. Then we move to Arnie's operation itself. He has a contract through the joint building service to the municipalities, and the cost of that contract is $252,000. So that covers the cost of the salaries, and the overhead for his particular department is an additional $33,000. So we're talking about $285,000 to try and recover for the actual building service itself. Next slide. So we add the 285 to the 44,498. And so the total recoverable costs, and this goes back to my earlier description of what is reasonable. These are the reasonable recoverable costs that the joint building group would be looking to recover through the building permit fee revenues. So $329,498. Next slide. So then the building permit fee calculations were undertaken. We looked at all of the classes of permit types and services, being the occupancy groups. Council members may not be familiar with the occupancy groups per se, but the F occupancy is industries. For example, the C occupancy is residential. And then there are other types of permits, change of use, demolition permits, permits for solid fuel appliances, farms, agricultural buildings, that sort of thing. So we did time allocation, applying it to all of the phases of the building inspection process, and then multiply that by an hourly rate for salaries and benefits and overhead for both the direct and indirect costs, and derived essentially a per unit cost for the fees. So the next slide gives you an indication of how the calculation was done for a single detached dwelling, which is probably one of the most common types of building permits that's issued. In this case, the CBO plays a minimal function. There was no time assigned for his function, even though he does play a management function. So the largest part of the costs are really the building inspector himself or herself, as the case may be, receiving applications, reviewing the building plans, and undertaking the inspections. Of that 21.5 or 22, rounded to 22 hours, roughly 10 hours is inspection time. So out doing the inspections in the field on residential buildings. So the cost of that 22 hours is $1269.61. And added to that is the overhead costs, the associated overhead costs of the building service at $90.47 per permit. And the indirect costs, so these are the support services, finance, HR, and so forth, council, and they're calculated to be $122 per permit. And the indirect legal costs, doesn't look like very much, but much of the legal costs for the building service is actually in the direct, in Arnie's budget for the direct costs. But the indirect legal costs are $1.32 per permit. So the base cost for single attached dwelling building permit is $1,483.40. So you move to the next slide. And there are some adjustments that I want to talk about now. Next slide. As I indicated earlier, there are some adjustments that are required. Now, I apologize for this particular overhead. There's a lot of information here, but essentially I'm just going to go to the line 2, which is the low density residential, just to carry forth with that $1483.40 figures. And added to that is an adjustment for what I call a cross subsidy. As you know, people apply for building permits for decks and for minor structures and so forth. And it's very seldom that a municipality will try to cover the full cost of that particular type of construction, and largely because of the resistance they get to paying the actual fees. So for a building permit for a deck, as an example, the cost of providing that service may be $500, $600, $700. Well, that's a considerable amount of money when the deck may only be a 10 by 20 or very, very small deck. So the adjustment for cost subsidy reduces the value or the cost of the building permit for a deck, and transfers the differential between that and the actual cost to the major permits. So everybody is really sharing in the cost of providing the building permit service. So that adds to the $1483 about $600 thereabouts. And added to that is the reserve fund fee, the stabilization, cost stabilization reserve fund that I talked about. And in this case, it's I'm suggesting 10%, and I'm suggesting 10% because the permit volumes over the past number of years are fairly constant, and the differential between the top end and the low end of permit activity is not dramatic. So a 10% is not an unreasonable figure. So that 10% added to the previous figures comes up with a fee of $2,291.74 for a permit for a single detached dwelling. And that figure is based on an average dwelling size. Now, when I first initiated the study and talked with Arnie and his staff, we were talking something in the range of 1,500 square feet. That was ultimately adjusted to 2,000. But that's the $2,291.74 is considered to be the applicable cost to issuing a permit and doing all the inspections for a dwelling with 1,500 square feet in area. Now, we recognize that people that have some extra cash, if you wish, like to build larger dwellings. But larger dwellings do require more time in terms of the review of the drawings, the building drawings. Takes more time in terms of the actual on-site inspections. So for this particular category, as well as other categories in column E, there are adjustments that are suggested. And those adjustments allow the building department to charge a greater fee, if you wish, for a larger building. So if somebody was going to build a 4,000 square foot dwelling, they would pay the $2,291.74 plus $1 per square foot greater than the 1,500 square feet. So the differential between 1,500 square feet and 4,000 square feet. So then we took the figure and multiplied it by 38, which is the average number of single detached dwellings, and we came up with for the revenues related to the cost stabilization, that would amount to $86,976.80. So that would essentially be the figure required for full cost recovery for processing building permits for those 38 single detached dwellings, plus 10%. If it was strictly the cost recovery for the inspection service without the reserve, it would be 79,000 and change. So as you can see from this particular table, there are a lot of calculations that were undertaken for various types of permits, but I thought I would dwell, as I say, on the one that is probably most familiar to council members. Next slide, please. So out of that table that you previously saw, here's one that I guess is a little easier to read. The recommended fees that I suggested are on the right-hand side. So the third column, if you wish, and the fees that Arnie is recommending to you are in the first two columns, or essentially the middle column. Now, this is a bit different in structure from the previous table, and we start to talk about assembly, occupancies, Group A, Group B, and maybe it's more appropriate to jump down to the Group C occupancy, the residential, because that's what we've been talking about. So what we agreed upon as reasonable for fees for single detached dwellings was to look at an average size of 2,000 square feet rather than the 1,500, as that might be a little closer to the reality of the dwelling sizes in your community and in the other two communities. And that adjustment raised the fees from $2,291 and changed to about $2,400, and but still charging the $1 per square foot for dwellings that are over 2,000 square feet in floor area. So the 2,400 is also a figure that's rounded, and my interpretation of the legislation is it does give you the flexibility, again, using the word reasonable, to round fees up or down a bit to make it a little easier from an administrative standpoint in levying those fees. So rather than saying it's $2,291.74, it's $2,400 plus $1 per square foot. Now, I did mention, not sure, I think we should go to the next slide, because I did mention earlier that there were circumstances where Arnie felt that maybe a lesser fee would be appropriate given the type of structure. And in this particular table, you've got a couple of examples that I would like to talk to. So for agricultural buildings, I had suggested, again, based on full cost recovery, a fee of $15.39.16 plus 48 cents per square foot for agricultural buildings over 5,000 square feet. And in our discussions, we decided on, rather than the full charge, because agriculture is so important to your community in terms of your economic base, that it would be more reasonable to levy a fee of $500 plus 35 cents a square foot. So the farming industry is given a bit of a break. But that's not uncommon to, again, in other parts of Ontario, to give the farming community a break because of the significant contribution that they make to the economic base of the communities. And going down to some of the lesser fees, the $300 flat fee, as opposed to the $337.02. The $337.02 reflects the 10%, and it's kind of a bit of an awkward, I guess, amount. The $300 really is a rounding out to the nearest 100, and that's an easy fee to remember, and it's applied in a number of different circumstances, and it does certainly make it appropriate for smaller structures, smaller, whether they be detached garages, sheds, boats, or swimming pools, that sort of thing. So that was what was decided upon in terms of being reasonable. But again, for some of the accessory buildings, the larger the building, obviously, the more amount of time that's required to review plans and do inspections and so forth. So for detached garage, for example, if it's greater than 500 square feet in area, there would be $1 per square foot charged for whatever the square footage was over 500 square feet. Next slide. So my recommendations to Arnie's group and ultimately to the three municipal councils was that you adopt a building permit fee that includes provision for revenues to be directed to that cost stabilization reserve fund. Again, harkening back to the mayor's early comment about the taxpayer not having to subsidize the cost of the building service. So if you have a cost stabilization reserve fund, you've got some funds to draw from if you have a period of slow building permit activity and you have operational costs that exceed your revenues, or you have some unique costs, whether it be purchasing a municipal vehicle or perhaps a new computer system of some sort, or an electronic software system of some sort. So that's my recommendation. I recommended that the fee structure I set out in table 5 would be adopted, and the screen's disappeared here on me. Well, it wasn't quite at the end there, Jill, but I guess if I go the, yeah, thank you for bringing it back. Now, something else that I did, and this is based on the experience of working with municipalities for the last 15 years and doing these kinds of studies, is I recognize quite a number will do a study and they won't adjust their fees until the next study is done. And sometimes that study's not done for 5 or 10 years. I did a whole raft of studies down in your area back in around 2005, 2007, thereabouts. And Strathroy Caradoc asked me to review their fees, and so there was a major increase as a result because they had not made they had not made significant changes. So a unique feature that I'm suggesting to you, as I have to others, and to make it more palatable and understandable, I think, or reasonable to the public, was to allow for an annual adjustment in fees related to the consumer price index, which is considered to be a statistical instrument of reasonable reliability accepted across Canada. So what that means is that come January 1st of 2023, you could look at the CPI for 2022 and it might have changed by 1.5% or something of that sort. So that means that fees in 2023 would be adjusted to by 1.3% or whatever it was, so that you're keeping up with essentially the cost of doing business, the cost of living, and that same sort of figure should cover your increases in municipal costs as well. And the final recommendation that I'm making to you is to adopt a new building bylaw. And there were some adjustments that were felt necessary, not the least of which is the delegation of responsibilities for conditional building permits and agreements, and dealing with alternative styles of construction and so forth. And some responsibilities that would normally require a council to make a decision on being delegated down to the building staff means that building permits can be issued in an expeditious factor, again, hearkening back to Mayor Mayhew's comment about expediting matters, so that the building industry is not held up. And goodness knows, we know that there is a real demand for new housing in your municipality, as well as many other parts of Ontario and Canada. So if we can expedite the approval process, then so much the better. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity to make the presentation. I'm certainly available for questions that you may have, or members of council or others may have.
Thank you, Glenn, very, very much. That was a very detailed presentation, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to compliment you and Arnie, because I know Arnie was in the background on this, and it was a great team. Council will certainly entertain questions from council through the chair. And please advise me, council, if you want them directed to Glenn or Arnie, please. Go ahead, ask any questions. Yes, Councillor McGill, go ahead, followed by Councillor Vink.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I think through you, I'll address my question to Arnie. In the report, enforcement was mentioned. Now, I think we all know sometimes people just go ahead and do things without getting a building permit. And raising our fees kind of concerns me, because I'm afraid that might happen more often. So what are we doing to enforce the collection of building permits?
Sure.
Thank you, Mark. Go ahead, Arnie.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Mayor. That's a great question. And what we'd like to bring to council, hopefully by the end of the first quarter, is a building bylaw with set fines. So we do get calls and complaints from neighbors on other neighbors of people building without building permits. And if the building bylaw has a set fine, we can write them a ticket. Like you would get a ticket on the highway. It's the same sort of thing for speeding. You would get a ticket for building without a building permit, and then you would have to still get your building permit. So there is some enforcement that way as well. Quite often we do have neighbors reporting other neighbors, and we do see construction from time to time driving about in our doing our rounds and inspections, and we will check our files to see if there is a permit and stop in. But it would be nice to have an additional penalty on top of just your building permit fees. Otherwise, there's no real incentive to get a permit unless you get caught and you're not paying any more. So that's one thing that we're planning to do this year.
Thank you, Arnie. And Councillor McGill, Mr. Tunick alluded to the fact that the small jobs like decks and basement renovations were very competitively priced, as opposed to larger builds. So that may have some bearing on it. Follow-up question, Mark?
Yeah, I noticed there where it says manure storages, grain bins, silos, etc., $500 flat fee. It was $200. And I know that because I got two of them about 2 years ago, and I paid $200 each. And at that time, I'd been told by somebody in the industry I didn't need to get a building permit. He said, nobody gets a building permit for those bins, they're too small. Well, it turned out I did need a building permit, and I got two of them. Is there a minimum size where you wouldn't have to get a building permit? Like some bins they're quite small, they're just for feed storage.
Yeah,
$500 seems like a lot for that.
Yeah, Arnie, go ahead.
Sure. Through the mayor, yeah, the minimum size of a building in Ontario that requires a building permit is 10 square meters. So that's practically any size of a grain bin or even hopper bin that you find on stilts. They all need building permits because they're all larger than 10 square meters. We've decided on a flat fee rather than by square footage, simply because they can be very large. You can get a bunker silo that's the size of a barn, and it's certainly not reasonable to equate the two as comparable. So we came up with a flat fee for that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Vink, I believe you're next, followed by Deputy Mayor. I believe I saw her hand.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Yeah, there in the chart there, it says major additions and alterations. I don't see anything about minor additions and alterations. How is that handled?
Yeah,
And
through the
you-
mayor,
Yep.
that's a great question. We may include that with the, actually in the fee bylaw. But typically it's when construction value is greater than $10,000, we would consider that a major renovation. But that's something that we can include in the building bylaw to be a bit more specific, which would make it easier on building staff as well. So it's not a gray area.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Vink. Deputy Mayor, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mayhew. My question's to Arnie. Arnie, you talk about having the ability under a bylaw to penalize people who neglect to get a building permit. Does Middlesex Center have that ability now?
Yes, through the mayor to the deputy mayor, we do have that in our building bylaw, as does the township of Lucan, but they both have set fines for numerous offenses, which includes building without a building permit, occupancy of dwellings without an occupancy certificate, and other, just a handful of other situations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor McGill, followed by Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just getting back to Councillor Vink's question about what would be considered a major addition or alteration. So say somebody wanted to redo their kitchen or something like that. What would the fee for that be?
Great.
I can have Glenn answer that perhaps if you can find his schedule, or Arnie, certainly feel welcome to raise your hand and step in.
Yeah, through the mayor,
Yeah.
I'm just scrolling through to the fee bylaw at the end of the council, at the end of the agenda here. It'll just take me a minute.
Councillor Bartlett, go ahead and ask your question. Perhaps we can get an answer while they're looking for that information.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to probably Glenn. The biggest capital expense seems to be an inspection vehicle. Is that expected to be a new vehicle, or can that be prorated with an existing one?
Through the mayor, the choice is actually the municipality's choice, and I think many municipalities are now choosing to look at electric vehicles as kind of the next generation of vehicles for the kind of service that they're providing. But it's what's considered to be, I think, reasonable in meeting your particular requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think too, I could add to that trucks have almost become offices today due to digital technology. They can access plans and drawings and fee schedules and even printing right on board. So it's quicker. Yes, and Arnie, go ahead.
Yeah, through the mayor, getting back to the price of a building permit for alterations, residential alterations. In the proposed bylaw at the end of the agenda, council's agenda today, it's recommending a flat fee of $300 for any renovations up to 500 square feet. So if you want to put an addition on your house, or you want to do some renovations and finish part of the main floor, take out some walls or beams, put in some beams, it's a set fee of $300 for the first 500 square feet, plus $1 a square foot above that 500 square feet. And that would kind of incrementally take you until it's a major alteration, until the value of the building permit fees equate.
Okay. Thank you, Arnie, and thank you, Councillor McGill. Any further questions? Glenn and Arnie, the mayor is always the last one to have a question, and I know this may be elementary, but it's important to me with my background. I'm asking both of you, are we still competitive in the marketplace in terms of this fee structure? And I'd be interested in both of your opinions on that.
My opinion is you're absolutely competitive. I think your fee structure is very reasonable. And having done so many studies across the province, I think you're even a bit on the lower side than a number of municipalities. So I think you're absolutely competitive. It's an awkward question in the sense that my comeback as well is that when I do the fee calculations, I take into account what the costs are to that particular municipality, and salaries, as you know, differ. Overhead costs differ, and so forth. And so I do caution council to be very careful about saying, well, we're better than you or not. I mean, the costs that I'm suggesting here are the full cost recovery costs for the service. But having said that, your costs are competitive, and I think one of the advantages, something I failed to mention, but I think one of the reasons why your costs are competitive is because Arnie's group has taken the initiative to electronize, if I can use that term, the process. It makes it much cheaper for people to deal with Arnie's group electronically than to come in for pre-consultation on an application, come back with the application, and having staff, perhaps frontline staff, reviewing it for compliance and so forth. With everything done electronically, it's making the system more economical, more efficient, and I think better for your municipality than, and I would say, Mr. Mayor, your municipality than many in Ontario who have not chosen to take that step. So I think you've got a great department that's working for you and putting you ahead of the curve in that sense. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't say at this point, I would want to say a major thank you to Arnie and his staff, and to the staff, municipal staff of each of the municipalities, Jill, for example, for all the time and effort they put into providing me with the information I require to give you those recommendations and those good fees.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Glenn, it's on my note, Arnie, to thank you, and certainly thank Middlesex Center for sharing you with us too. We appreciate that, but go ahead, Arnie. Yes.
Through the mayor, just to answer the question as well, your fees that are proposed are less than the fees that are at Middlesex Center and in Strathroy Caradoc, and significantly less than the City of London. So I kind of agree with Glenn that they're still on the relatively lower side across the province, and compared to those two local comparators, we're still higher.
Okay, question had to be asked. Thank you very much. Council, you have heard the presentation, and I think everyone has had a chance to ask questions, and thank you very much for your engagement in this subject, Council. The recommendation is before you to adopt the updated building fee schedule. Is anyone wish to entertain a motion that this be adopted? Chair is asking. Yes, moved by Councillor Scholdice. Thank you, Mike. Is there a seconder? Calling again. Is there a seconder to adopt the new fee schedule? Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Jill, moved by Scholdice, seconded by Wilkins. All in favor of the recommendation, please raise your hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Arnie.
Thank you. That was required to be public, a public meeting, and we have another one regarding zoning change that is a little more formal public meeting, Council. We'll get right into that. It's regarding the Elb Children's Center, 162 Main Street. Stephanie, thank you for being with us this evening. Could you advise Council of the purpose of this request?
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen with you. All right, so the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to rezone the subject lands from the institutional zone to the restricted commercial C2 zone, and that's in order to permit the former daycare building to be utilized as a single detached home for family living purposes. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal is considered to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and is in conformity with the county official plan, as residential uses are encouraged within settlement area boundaries on full municipal services. The downtown core designation of the Southwest Middlesex official plan permits primarily commercial uses and is intended to maintain a commercial street fronting presence within the most concentrated area of the core, which is located between Symes Street and the CN Rail. The subject lands are located south of the CN Rail, outside of the more concentrated area of the core, where the area and development is characterized by less intensive uses and a more diverse range of uses in that area. And so secondary permitted uses within this designation does include residential dwelling units, such as single detached dwellings. Staff are the opinion that the proposed rezoning will remain consistent with the character of the area, which, as you can see on your screen, there is the C2 zoning for some abutting residential uses in the downtown core in the immediate area surrounding the property, which is highlighted on your screen in yellow. The applicant has provided a detailed sketch of the property, including the setbacks, etc. And upon reviewing the detailed sketch, staff did identify a deficiency for the existing 2 accessory buildings that are 0.6 meters and 0.3 meters from the interior side lot line, whereas a minimum of 1 meter is required. So staff do recommend that as part of the rezoning application, the lands, a site-specific zoning apply to the lands to recognize the setback deficiencies. And overall, staff are in support of the requested zone change. The notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. The county engineer has no comments. Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority has no objections. And I believe our chief building official also has no objections. So it is recommended that the application be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, very much. Moving on, we have an itinerary to follow. Council, the applicant or the representative will be allowed the opportunity to speak. Jill, have any registered, or is there any present?
Yes, we do have I think agents acting as agents who are interested in participating. It's Carrie and Darren Angus.
Yes, Carrie and Darren, thank you very much for being with us tonight. If you could unmute yourself, we certainly would welcome your input into this, or just general comments of introduction. And Carrie and Darren, I'll remind you again to click on that red microphone and see if you can unmute yourself. Yeah, I think we got you.
Hi, thank you.
We can hear you. Welcome to Southwest Middlesex Council. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we were cut off just shortly, so we didn't hear what you had to say just prior to us unmuting. It was cut off. We were
okay. Generally, it was just an introduction for you to speak to us. The planner has given us the reasons for this meeting, and it is her recommendation that the request be granted. And in the process of the meeting, following the planner's comments, it's protocol that the applicant has a chance to speak. And this is your chance to speak to council if you wish, Carrie. It's totally up to you.
I don't think Darren and I have anything else to say other than just we appreciate the time and effort that everything has gone into this. Otherwise, we don't have any comment.
Okay, and I just want to tell you again that the planner has recommended the request, and the public have indicated no disagreement to the application as of this point in the meeting, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Carrie, we will perhaps call on you one more time to speak towards the end of the meeting. And that's entirely up to you if you wish to participate, okay? It's just that I do have an agenda that I must follow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, council, any remarks from council? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any oral submissions, Jill, or written submissions?
No, none were received.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we're at a point in the meeting where we will have a 5-minute recess. It's 8:16. We'll reconvene at 8:21. Jill, I think we have about a minute and a half there, or about a minute and 20 seconds. Jill, I'll watch your mute button. Just unmute yourself when you're ready to go.
Yep, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we've had our 5-minute recess to allow the public to become engaged in this process. Jill, were there any oral submissions from other participants registered?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Carrie and Darren, as I mentioned moments ago, you do have another moment to speak in our agenda. If you wish to speak, please do so now. If not, we certainly wish you the best as a council and as a Southwest Middlesex community. Okay, and I'll ask one more time. Yeah, go ahead. I think you're unmuted.
We just want to say thank you very much.
Okay, good. And we're pleased to have you. Thank you for your interest in Southwest Middlesex.
Thank you.
We're on the final agenda item for this item of business. Council, is your decision now to accept the recommendation of the planner that the application be granted? If
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder for that, please? I'll watch for hands. Deputy Bartlett, thank you. Last call for questions, Council. Seeing none, all in favor of the zoning change? Motion is carried. Thank you, Steph, very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. We're on 8 staff reports. 8A is fire. I don't believe there is any. And 8B is administration, fees and charges bylaw update. And I will hand this over to Jill and Greg. I think will be the presenters, and because it's financial matters, Krista may become engaged in this as well. Jill, could you introduce the subject to council, and I can allocate questions following the presentation.
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief. The fees and charges bylaw, you've dealt with part of it already this evening. So that section of the bylaw referred to as Schedule B is where the building fees come in. There's also bylaw enforcement in there as well. And Arnie touched on some of that, but with respect to bringing forward another building bylaw specific to actual fines. So the rest of this is related to updating the other fees and charges that the municipality has. So staff have worked and all departments have worked together to pull forward a proposal for you for this evening's consideration. And the report goes through just the proposed changes. So except for the building fees, building permit fees, the report is only dealing with those matters that we think should be changed, could be changed for council's consideration. So I'm not going to step through each one of these particular items. The bulk of them, frankly, are in facilities and recreation, just because of the nature of facilities and recreation, and where fees get updated on a regular basis, and there's a lot of small fees within there. The only other thing I might like to touch on is the planning services. So for planning applications, we are proposing some changes in there, and Stephanie did assist with a review across the county of what the fee structures were. And again, we're trying to align with our closest neighbors and bring the fees for applications in line with that, as well as, for instance, also trying to reflect that we know that sometimes there's a little bit of a reduced cost for some things. So I'll draw your attention to the one related to an amended site plan, where we're actually proposing that be a reduction in cost. So moving it to half. So if we know that we've already received an application and there's an amendment to be made, we're fairly familiar with the process already, and we think it takes a little bit less time to deal with amendments. So that's my presentation. If you would like Greg to speak, or Kristen to speak, or Colin to speak on any matters here tonight, we're more than able to take questions and put this forward for your consideration.
Thank you, Jill. That's encouraging words that you are actually making it more competitive in some aspects by reducing costs because of familiarity with an application. Greg, the comment that it is recreation focused comes by nature. And I'd be amiss if I didn't allow you to speak to it on some behalf. Any comments?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen, to Council, the rec and facilities team spent a fair bit of time putting together the proposed fee schedule. The major change that they are recommending is a Sunday through Thursday incentive for residents and non-residents to use our facilities at 50% and a 25% reduction. So if you are a user of our rent a room from us or community center from us, Sunday through Thursday, you as a resident can get a 50% reduction in that particular fee. And we will also want to encourage use from non-residents as well, and they get a 25% reduction. So that's a little bit of a change from the past. Generally, we looked at 4% increase right across the board. And we also brought the market into it, where we did look at all adjacent municipalities and looked at the fees that they were charging for the same service. And that was included in our sort of discussions and the recommendations that we're bringing forward tonight with regards to fees right across the board.
Okay. Thank you, Greg, very much. That sounds encouraging as well. Chief Sewell, I realize your department maybe is not engaged in this as much in fees, but you are in it to some degree. Can you explain to council what they may relate to and your vision on those?
To council through Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the time to speak about it. Yeah, our fees are not widely used. However, the most widely used is for a data search or a background check of a property during a sale, whether there's any outstanding fire code violations, or whether have orders issued to that type of residence, so that if someone is buying the property, they understand that there are fire-related items. So predominantly, that's a lot of the fees for what we've been utilizing the fees for bylaw has been, as well as any type of request for fire inspector, which is basically a cost recovery on our part. It's not overly expensive, but however, it is very time consuming, because it could generally generate a couple visits, maybe even 3. And it covers the time that FPO attends and has the interaction with the homeowner. So it's very reasonable, and we do judge each request on a request by request basis. So and we have a good dialogue with the owners or the applicant who is asking us to come in, and it's all about fire safety first, and then we'll have a dialogue with the client as well in regards to any type of fees if required. So that's I know we're not widely used, but that's a few things that we utilize in the fire service.
Good. No, we appreciate that information. Council, any questions on the matter? Yes, Councillor Cal, please go ahead.
Through the mayor to Mr. Storms, I just wanted to say thank you. I saw the addition there that took into consideration the rec committee's request associated with fees for coaches. So I just wanted to say thank you. And that was a useful opportunity to bring something that the community needed and wanted into a fees bylaw.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mayhew. So I guess my question is probably to Jill. And Jill, it's on the bylaw enforcement, proposed changes, grass cutting under the Weed Act and tidy yard bylaw, property standards. I see you're proposing to go from 150 to 200. I'm sure you know, you'd be the only one who would know that there's probably some times that that amount is exceeded in staff time. So if a complaint comes in, there's no pictures attached, then someone from staff have to go out and do that. And then there's, of course, the letters, and then there's often follow-up letters. Would it be possible to attach something like over and above a certain amount of time dedicated to one complaint? It could go hourly rate after they've exceeded the $200. We're trying to discourage people, right? We want people to be tidy. And a lot of times I realize it's absentee landowners that don't live in our community, so they don't care what the property looks like. But we're not trying to make this easy, I hope. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, Jill.
Through you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I agree. We do not want to be the project managers for finding contractors to do work on people's property. You know, we don't want to be used that way. This is supposed to be covering at least some of the administrative costs, as you've mentioned and noted what they would cover. And yeah, there are particular properties which we sometimes need to spend more time on. So the only thing, I think, if we were going to have a standard amount and then over and above, we would just have to establish how many hours the standard covers for staff time and then help to track that. So I could propose it probably takes at least of multiple staff multiple staff people that end up working on this, because that's usually how it works. That's probably at least 5 people's time covering that basic admin fee. So if it was beyond those hours of, perhaps it's 5 hours of staff time, then it's an additional charge on top of that. Is that the type of thing you're considering, Deputy Mayor?
That's what I'm looking for, Jill. It is.
Well, if it's something you'd like to propose, we can certainly make that change as an amendment to the schedule if council chooses tonight, or we could come back with a quick update with more information, whatever you'd like.
I'm comfortable with an amendment, and I'm prepared to propose that, Jill, if we could do that, and I'll make that motion.
If we're making a slight amendment, I would like to add one as well, a small one, please, and thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cal, go ahead at this time if you'd like.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that minor soccer and minor baseball for the season has increased by $6. And at this time, the hope is that with a return to sports this summer, we'll be able to attract more families. I'd love to see not such a large increase. And if we could bring that back down to $20 for each child rather than have it at $22. I understand that there was a broad increase of 4% generally applied to everything, but it would be appreciated by the community if the increase wasn't so steep.
Okay, yep. All right. It will be up to council to do that. We, as I say, we have to be thoughtful of our community and competitive, but we also have to make sure that we can pay for costs. So it's a balancing act, council. Councillor Vink, go ahead. I see your hand, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Yes, to Greg, I see in the adult tournament for baseball, it says here $66 to $300. That seems to be quite a large increase. And just one comment on the deputy mayor's amendment. I'm not in favor of that because if you read it, there's already a 33% increase in administration costs. Plus, don't forget, they have a contractor's fee cost on top of the administration. So they're looking at a cost of roughly $500 as it is to just to cut some grass.
Okay, and Greg, yes, that first question, if you could address that, please.
Yeah, and thank you, and through you, Mary Ellen, and thanks to Councillor Vink for pointing out an error in the information. It didn't go from 66 to 300. The 66 total was a daily rate. It wasn't sort of specified that way. It has been used a couple different ways in the past. It's been used per diamond, etc. So the suggested fee for tournaments for both minor ball and adult ball is at $150 per diamond, or $300 per day. So that's really the way it should read.
Okay, that clarifies that, and we'll make sure that that correction is noted, Jill, if council adopt this with that change. And thanks, Greg, very much for clarifying that. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second? We'll take these one at a time. Deputy Mayor has put forth a motion regarding the increase should administration find a file burdensome in the property standards element of grass cutting. The motion has been put on the floor. Is there a seconder? Chair will call it now. And the chair will ask one more time, is there a seconder for the deputy mayor's motion? Yes, Councillor Cal, you're seconding that? Yeah, thank you. Any questions you wish to direct to the deputy mayor or Councillor Cal? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cal.
My one comment is that in almost every single situation, these are derelict landlords who are not taking care of their properties. And my hope is that with the climate that we are in the housing market, that we will never have to use this fee because everyone will sell their properties, make lots of money and build a house there, and then the new owner will take care of it. But in these types of situations, perhaps having a hefty fee will encourage them to divest themselves of the property so that we can get an active member into the community. I have received complaints of multiple properties in residential areas that are overrun each summer, and vermin move in, and it takes quite a while to get anyone under control. And perhaps if there was a large penalty associated with it not taking care of their property, they would stay on top of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? We have a mover and a seconder. Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Mayor Mayhew, I want to record a vote on this.
Okay, thank you. And Deputy Mayor, will you take the gavel for a minute, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Mayhew, you have something you want to comment on or debate? Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilkins. It's been a healthy discussion, and I can certainly see where the ideas have come from. But I remind council that I don't want to complicate things or get in the weeds. We have had a substantial increase in that, and I think too that in terms of Councillor Cal's comments, I know they meant well, and there's many aspects of it I agree, but I just want to make mention of the fact that this is tied into the effectiveness of bylaw enforcement. And if our bylaw enforcement officer is effective at what he is doing, a lot of these properties will be cleaned up because the complaint comes before the fine. And that I think has to be mentioned in this subject because the two categories are tied together. So I'm not leaning my support towards these at the current time because my concern is that if we are using our bylaws of property standards efficiently and our bylaw officer is doing his job, a lot of these situations should be remediated. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, very much.
So Mayor Mayhew, I have a question for you. Then you believe that the taxpayer from Southwest Middlesex should be subsidizing these derelict properties or untidy properties? I'd just like to know that. I think the public would too.
I don't think you have presented an actuarial analysis, Deputy Mayor, that we are subsidizing, the taxpayers are subsidizing this. We have increased these fees substantially. Staff have taken this into consideration. We're not doing an actuarial analysis as to how much this is going to cost each taxpayer. We have raised this up considerably, and I'm offended by that statement, is my opinion. But anyway, no, I will keep my.
Well, to be quite honest, Mayor Mayhew, or before even a letter goes out, there's a substantial amount of work that goes into every one of these complaints, whether it's picture taking, even before the bylaw officer is called, and follow-up letters, and then trailing that again. I have kept track of what some of the office staff have done on some of these complaints, just trying to chase down the property owners. It's substantial. And I don't believe the $200 even comes close to covering it when you factor in that the bylaw officer and his inspections are included in that also. So yes, the general taxpayer are subsidizing these property owners that are not taking care of their properties. And there's many in Southwest Middlesex. If there weren't, this wouldn't be an issue. The only way we're going to ever resolve this is if we hit them where it hurts, and that's in the pocketbook. So $200, in my opinion, isn't achieving that.
I too regard property standards as very high on my list. And I have expressed this at economic development meetings. I think when you have to look at why a property is in disrepair, there are many, many reasons. And certainly we're not identifying any property owners, but there can be the economic consequences of losing a job. There can be a mental health issue of why the property is in a devastated state. And so it's not just an objection to cut the grass. It goes beyond that. And I think that this is a start. It's a beginning. No legislation or bylaw is perfect, but I think at the current time, in the current situation, and in the current environment we are in with this state of emergency, I think that this is a very good start rather, and staff have put thought in it. And I have no more questions, Deputy Mayor, or no more responses.
Mayor Mayhew, you have the gavel, so I have a question.
Yep.
One more comment, actually.
Yep, go ahead.
I will just remind council that many, many, many of these property owners, it's yearly. It isn't that they get a letter once and then they all of a sudden start cutting the property on a regular basis. Jill will concur with me on that, I'm sure, that this is annually. They don't learn anything from the year before, having got the letter and the penalty. They keep doing it. The next year they do it again. It's just repeated year after year after year.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council, any further questions? Yes, Councillor Scholdice, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm just looking for confirmation. Is this just strictly for urban properties, or is it for rural properties in disrepair as well?
My understanding is it's throughout Southwest Middlesex, but I'm going to ask Jill to clarify that. Most bylaws cover the municipality. Is that correct, Jill?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Last call for questions. Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Could what we are voting on be read again?
Yes, it can be. The staff have put forth the report, and there's been a request for an amendment to the report that additional time spent be calculated and invoiced. Jill, you can clarify that.
Yes, I understood it. This is just a motion to amend the proposed fee related to bylaw enforcement and the administration fee with the $200 base fee with additional per hourly staffing costs for files that exceed 5 hours. I believe that was what it was, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Jill, very much. Council, last call for questions. And this is a recorded vote. Jill, you take it at your leisure.
Okay, so we'll start with the requester. So Deputy Mayor Wilkins,
Yes.
Mayor Mayhew.
No.
We have, who's next? Councillor McGill.
Yes.
And Councillor Choi.
Yes.
Councillor Cowell
Yes.
and Councillor Vink
No.
and Councillor Bartlett
Yes.
and Councillor Scholdice.
No.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Council. That is good. We can agree to disagree at times, but we do what has been passed and resolved and for the benefit of the community. Councillor Cowell, yes, you have a question there. Go ahead, Krista.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for an additional amendment that we reduce the minor soccer and minor baseball 4-season per child increase from $6 down to $4.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Wilkins, I saw your hand first. Thank you. We'll entertain questions. Yes, Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Mayor Mayhew, thank you. I believe if this is the right one, it's actually 22 to 16, not 6 to 4.
It's actually
We're
the
talking
amount.
about-
So
We're talking about minor soccer and minor baseball.
the increase amount is $6. So from 16 to 22 is $6. And I'm suggesting an increase of $4, which would have the cost for minor sports per child be $20.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that, Krista. Okay, Council, yes, Martin, a follow-up, go ahead.
Well, yes, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I don't see why we're fooling around for $2. Why not just put it back to $16 then?
There's a motion on the floor and there's a seconder. We'll see if this passes. If it doesn't pass, you have that option. Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
I would like to hear through the chair from Mr. Storms about why an increase may be necessary. Maybe not such a large increase is what I'm proposing.
Okay, thank you very much. I think in your agenda, you'll see why there is perhaps a necessary and purchase of a new mowing equipment. But Greg, go ahead. You can take the councillor's question.
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Allen, I think generally we use the 4% across the board with regards to these type of increases. Plus, we looked at the different markets that are out there and different programming in other municipalities. That's how we came up with the number. I don't have a big problem if council wanted to reduce that number for coming out of COVID to provide incentive to get more people involved in soccer and in minor ball. I think we've done that at the pool, with the early bird rate there, which has been adjusted somewhat for, providing incentive to get more youngsters involved with the pool programs. So if it was taken back to 16, we would not have a big problem with that.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Council, last call for questions. Yes, Councillor Cowell, please go ahead.
If that's the case, then I'm happy to bring it back down to 16, if that's what Mr. Storms is saying, because.
I think you said.
Yeah, I wouldn't be making the motion, so I wouldn't be saying that. But like, if council wants a reduction, then that's up to them to make that choice, whether it's 20 or 16.
Okay.
Then I'd love to accommodate Councillor Vink's suggestion and make a friendly amendment to bring it back down to the original amount and see no increase in minor sports, minor baseball or soccer.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Councillor Vink.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, council, last call. No extensions. I think we've chatted about enough. Jill, I see your hand halfway up there.
Yeah, halfway up. Sorry, Deputy Mayor had already seconded that, and I think Councillor Cowell was adjusting. So
I realize that fully. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor of the fees in soccer and baseball remaining the same, please raise your hand. Opposed? Noted. Thank you, Council. Okay, 8C building, we have had that in the consent correspondence.
Oh, Mayor, if I can just interrupt, if council is happy with the rest of the fees, do you mind just having a motion?
Yes, we certainly do. Yeah, we need a motion to accept that. Council approve the fees and charges bylaw as dated above. Is there a motion by Councillor McGill, I take it, and Councillor Wilkins has seconded it? And we'll call for questions. Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, noted. Jill, I think we can go to 8C now, building, and I believe it's been looked after. 8D finance, the cost of living increase that council approved a 5.2% cost increase for full-time and part-time non-union staff. Kristen, would you like to walk us through this?
So council had, sorry, I'm having a problem with my mouse here, had requested a report back on information on on our surrounding municipalities' cost of living increase. So what I did was weigh a few years, because some councils, as I found, kind of tried to average it amongst a few years, whereas some went with cost of living each year. So it looks, you can see the chart in the analysis section. You can see what the union has negotiated for 19, 20, and 21. You can see there's a it's slightly grayed out and a purple mark in the top corner of the 2022 box. I averaged out the previous 3 years because they have they're in the process of reviewing their agreement this year and have yet to set that. But I tried to gather as much information as I could from the surrounding municipalities. So just a reminder, this does not include union or council. The union will be negotiated and council is already set at 5.2 as per their separate bylaw.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kristen. Council, I'm sure there'll be a dialogue on this. I just want to remind council that we are proud of our staff. This is a discussion about the percentage rate of increase in wages. It has nothing to do with productivity or administration or how things unfold in the office. It is strictly to do with that percentage rise that has been suggested in the recommendation based on the consumer price index. Any questions that council have? Any comments? Yes, Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. My comment is the or part, I believe, and I'm making a motion that it should be 2% Middlesex County, Haslett, Strathroy, Caradoc, 1.8, Adelaide, Metcalfe. And also at the same time, the council increase in salary should be rolled back to 2% as well. And I'm making that a motion.
Okay, and is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Scholdice. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Yes, Councillor Cal.
Took a long time thinking about how I wanted to support staff. And it's a really diverse group of people who are looking at this, including our firefighters. And I think when we took a look at our unionized versus non-unionized staff, the tradition has been to provide usually more of an increase to the non-unionized staff than the unionized staff. And if we look at the average, that isn't the situation. I was annoyed that this had to come to us. And I get it, it's part of our job. And I don't mean that I'm annoyed it came to us, but I wished we had a better way at considering increases like this so that it wasn't so political in nature, because that's what this is. When looking at this, I thought to myself, wouldn't it have been nice if everyone just got 2 every year? It just made it easy, 2%, 2%, 2%. So when I did my math, which we all know I'm not very good at, I looked at it and said, okay, if we had given them 2% every year, we would be looking at 8% total. And this probably wouldn't even be a discussion because it would have been included in the budget and it wouldn't have been left to arbitrary things like the increase at 5.2%. So I won't be supporting this motion because I think we should be looking at a 3.4% increase, which would take a look at saying everyone had gotten 2% all of the time, making up for the fact that last year they only got 0.7. And I mean, Councillor Vink is even suggesting they should get 2%. I agree, but they should have been getting 2% for the last 4 years. So I won't be supporting it because I do think that we should have been averaging 2%. And I'd like to take a look and see, I know that our fire staff are some of the lowest paid fire staff in the county. And I think we have some of the best trained fire staff. So with that in mind, I'd like to consider that at a future date, and maybe Chief Sewell can give us a little bit of feedback on that. However, it's not something that has to be decided today.
Okay, yes, Councillor, thank you, Councillor Cal. Councillor Schultes.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd like to request a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Yep, that is noted. We'll certainly have some discussion on this before the subject closes. Anyone else? Councillor McGill, followed by Councillor Cal.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I won't be supporting this motion. You know, I think, well, 4% is the one thing. This is a good chart up here, comparison chart, but we don't know where the starting point is in all these other municipalities. We could just kind of assume that probably we're paying about the same as the rest of them are, but I don't really know that for sure. Don't know, but know it for sure about the firefighters, for example. And I know in the private sector, some people have been getting some very good increases because employers want to keep their staff. If you drive around the country, you'll see all those signs up where businesses used to advertise what they have for sale. Instead, now they've got on their sign who they want to hire because they're all looking for staff. So yeah, I think we should be higher than 2%. So I'm not going to support this.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Councillor Cal.
Through the chair to Chief Sewell, I'd like to know, especially because you're in the unique position for working with a few different municipalities, can you give us some feedback about the pay range that our fire, if we can, in an open session, that our firefighters receive in comparison to those in the other counties?
Okay, Councillor Chief Sewell, I don't believe a response is requested, but if you need those numbers, we realize that it may take some work.
Through the council, through Mr. Mayor, I have no problem reaching out to my counterparts in Middlesex County as well as Elgin County. Elgin County just recently did a survey there, so I'd rather not talk openly about the wages that everyone's receiving, but I will have no issue with bringing back a report to council at a later date in regards to a jurisdictional scan of the wages in the municipalities surrounding us.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Councillor Cowell, certainly a follow-up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I totally understand that at this point, 2.5 has been what's budgeted. So if we are looking at a large scale change to the fire services, it likely won't happen in this budget, but it provides a good information and a baseline for us understanding if there's inequities and how we can, support changing them.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I agree with everything that Councillor Cowell has said. I would like to see going forward a report come back from our CAO just showing us what a 2% increase every year going forward from this year might look like, and would save future councils this exercise annually. We've done it this way for 21, 22 years. It's never been an issue until, of course, it's an inflated rate of 5.2 this year. And then it's an issue with some councillors. So I find that interesting, by the way. So I won't be supporting this motion either.
Thank you. Councillor Scholz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd just like to remind council that every other municipality in Middlesex Centre on this chart is 2% or less.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Cowell, last one. Go ahead, Krista.
And I would just suggest that every single one of those people get paid more than the staff at Southwest Middlesex, and we are encouraging them potentially to leave our organization and find work elsewhere, because I'm quite certain, looking at different pay scales and the that sunshine list, that on a regular basis we fall below it.
Okay, last call. Councillor Vink, Councillor Bartlett, following Councillor Vink. Thank you for your patience, Doug. Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. To counteract with Councillor Cowell, she has no proof of what she says. And I don't think that's accurate, her statement.
Okay, that's a comment. We'll leave it at that. Doug, go ahead, Councillor Bartlett. You had a question? Doug?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Apologize, my internet's acting up a little bit.
Yep.
First of all, I'd like to reread, but I'd also like to state that a 2.5% increase, not only is the
Oh, I'm very interested in what you're saying here, Doug. I regret stick with us on it. Okay, the chair certainly just interrupt the chair if you get your connectivity back. Councillor Cowell, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'll give you the privilege of asking a fourth question. Go ahead, Krista.
Thank you. Yes, it was more of a rebuttal to Councillor Zink accusation that I'm making up unfactual information. I would happily provide that proof to him and send it along that shows our job postings in comparison to other municipalities' job postings, and how we on a regular basis are lower in pay scale to other municipalities hiring similar jobs. Happily follow up with that information for you.
That's Councillor Cowell. That's certainly your prerogative to do. Thank you. Doug, you're back with us, are you? I hope. Nope, we lost him again. While we're waiting for that, for Doug to come back, Deputy Mayor, would you be kind enough to take the gavel again?
Absolutely, Mayor Mayhew.
Thank you again, Mary Gay.
You have a question or comment, Mayor Mayhew?
Yeah, I rely on recommendations from staff to be balanced, and I know they have done this on a historical basis. We have gone with the CPI index, but it just seemed a little out of balance with me, this recommendation. And I was not the only one that had concerns. I've been approached by several individuals asking, querying into the 5.2% increase. The cost of living index and the basket of items that it represents has not been without criticism by financial advisors. And I've spoke to many in my lifetime. An example would be found in two items being in that basket, being alcohol and recreational cannabis, if you can believe it, are two items in that basket. In addition to that, wages and salary reviews take into consideration more than the cost of living index. This council has approved investments in better working conditions, additional staff, shorter work weeks for some individuals have been ratified, work from home alternatives. And I believe this list could be expanded if we had the time to have dialogue in it, which we don't. I maybe have missed some benefits that this council have bestowed on our office employees. And these benefits should be considered in our request. I'm not comfortable with the motion that Councillor Vink has put forth. I think it is too low. I was looking at 2.75 to 3 is my comfort level. I think 2 is a little low. I've been complimentary to staff in both written and verbal formats on numerous occasions. I can substantiate this. I know they work hard on our behalf and to the benefit of our municipality. But my objection to the 5.2 request is not based on performance or attitudes in any way, but rather situational analysis of us being in a state of emergency. And I will not support Councillor Vink's motion, although I do respect it. I think that many of our thoughts are on the same plane, but I think we're setting the bar a little low here. And my comfort level was, I had jotted down between 2.75 and 3, and I certainly did not want to express those comments without handing the gavel over to our Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Mary Gay, for taking that.
You're welcome.
Yes, the Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor Mayhew. Thank you. Just a comment. I don't think anybody here is suggesting that it's 5.2. I haven't heard that. So we'll just see where we go from there.
Yep, the recommendation was put at 5.2. Yeah,
yes, I realize that.
Yep. Okay, there is a motion on the floor and a seconder. Are there any other questions? All in favor of the motion moved by, this is is this an open vote, recorded vote? Okay, go ahead. Moved by Vink, seconded by Scholdice.
And the request was from, Councillor Bartlett.
Yes, Doug, thank you.
Sorry,
for back. Yeah, Doug, the
well,
chair will certainly give you the privilege of, yeah, we'll give you the privilege of your opinion, Doug, on this. We know you've had issues with connectivity.
I think my, thank you, Mayor. I think my opinions have been noted already, but I would still like to hear the motion read back, please, if I could.
Yes, the chair, the CAO will read it.
So the motion is that council provides staff with a 2% cost of living increase for the full-time and part-time non-union salary grid and the volunteer fire salary grid for 2022, effective Jan 1, 2022, and that council's cost of living be reduced for 2022 from 5.2% to 2%.
Okay. You've heard the motion has been read. It's understood by council. Does anyone need clarification? Jill, call it at your leisure.
Okay, it was Councillor Scholdice that requested it, if I recall. So Councillor Scholdice.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
No.
Mayor Mayhew.
No.
Councillor McGill.
No.
And Councillor Choi is abstaining, and so Councillor Cowell.
No.
And Councillor Vink.
Yes.
And Councillor Bartlett.
No.
And the motion is defeated.
Okay, council, we're not done with this business. 2% was not acceptable to you. Is there some further And I just want to perhaps bring reference back to comments that Councillor Cowell made. That is very, and I had it in my notes as well, that I know the fire departments, we're looking forward to Chief Sewell bringing back those numbers. And if you remember, in the past, this council supported pay on Sunday to the firefighters, where in the past, they were not paid for that particular day. So, you know, maybe there are things we can do to tweak our fire department, and we'll look forward to that conversation with the chief. Yes, thank you for your patience. Councillor Cowell, please go ahead.
I would propose that we have an increase of 3.2%, and then any type of report that we have come back will be a separate motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
I didn't mean 3.2, I meant 3.4. I think I said 3.2, I meant 3.4.
Okay, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Discussion, council. Yes, Deputy Mayor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm just, my question is to Councillor Cowell. How did you arrive at that figure?
So I basically took the difference that if we had increased everybody to 2% over the last 4 years from 2019, and so the 1% from 2019, the 1.3 or the 0.1, and then the 1.3, and then if this year we had 2%, I just added the differences that we didn't have in 2019 and we didn't have in 2021, for a total of 8%. And one of the things that we have regularly heard is that we frequently give our non-unionized staff a little bit more, and have for many, many years. So if we made things a little bit more simple, I think it gives the opportunity to say praise straight across the board.
Yes, follow-up question, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm wondering if the mover would accept a friendly amendment that if this motion does pass, that that council's remuneration go down to 3.4 as well for the remainder of this term.
Certainly.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I can support this. In fact, I was leaning to go even higher. And I think any increase we give the staff that's less than the actual cost of living is that we're actually giving them a pay cut, because the cost of, you know, their money isn't worth as much as it used to be. But at the same time, I'm looking at this chart, what other places are giving. But let me give an example here. Plimpton, Wyoming, 4%, for a total increase in the last 4 years of 8.6%. Well, for us to match that 8.6% increase over 4 years, we would have to give 4% this year. And then our total over the last 4 years would be an 8.6% increase, the same as Plimpton, Wyoming. And I'd like to remind you all that 2 of our former employees are now working for Plimpton, Wyoming. And municipal employees are just like anybody else. They move around. It's not always about the money, but that certainly plays a role. But I'm afraid that if I voted against this, I'm afraid the rest of you don't have the appetite to go for an even higher increase. So I think I will support this 3.2% increase.
I believe, to correct you, is 3.4.
Oh, 3.4. Okay. So that puts us up to, 7% over the 4 years, and Plimpton, Wyoming actually is 8.6%. Okay. Yeah, 3.4. That puts us up to 8%. Yeah.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, please go ahead.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yes, Councillor Scholdice, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd like to request a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Yes, and then last question, Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I just want to point out that I will be voting no, but I do agree with the amendment to reduce council's wages from 5.2 to 3.4, although 2 would have been better.
Okay, fine. Okay, I understand the concept of your thinking there, Martin. So, and I think that gesture that has been recommended to for council to match any pay increase we give staff would be beneficial, and we don't know there'd be a retraction in that. Okay, Jill, at your leisure, you can call the question.
Councillor Scholdice,
No.
Deputy Mayor Wilkins,
Yes.
Mayor Mayhew,
No.
Councillor McGill,
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
Yes.
Councillor Vink,
No.
and Councillor Bartlett.
Yes.
Okay, and the motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill. Councillor Cowell, for a moment, I thought you froze on your screen, and I thought, oh no, this is not good timing. So anyway, I'm glad you're live on air. Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Oh, you're on mute, Mayor. Gay.
I was already muted, unmuted. Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd like to make a motion that we have staff come back with a report sometime this year that gives us kind of examples of what 2% straight across the board would look like, increase every year, instead of coming back to future councils having to deal with this.
Okay, good suggestion, and I appreciate very much you saying there's that it's an open time agenda on that. The staff will appreciate that because they're very busy. Jill, I'd be amiss not to ask for any comment on that. We know that we are in our last year. I don't want to encumber another council on that. Do you feel comfortable with that a motion?
A report? Yeah,
yeah.
certainly we can work on a report for sure.
That's good. Okay, and I think I'll ask for a seconder for this so that we can have this modified by council, seconded by Councilor Bartlett. One call for discussion. Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of a straight 2% pay increase because we have no idea what inflation's going to do. It could go way up, it could go down.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather see that it's part of our job, really. We should be discussing this every year and setting an appropriate rate.
Yeah, thank you. And Councilor Vink, go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Councilor McGill. There's no sense to be adding anything to it.
And Councilor Scholdice, I think I saw your hand there, Mike.
I just am in agreement with what Councilor McGill just said, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and Councilor Cowell, go ahead.
I just have a question. Is this something that Councillor Choi can come back for because it's asking for a report back, or is it not? I mean, I guess that's up to her.
We'll leave it to Councilor Choi's discretion. It would still affect the payroll of her partner, I believe. But Jill, do you want to make a ruling on that, or should we leave it up to Councilor Choi?
We'd have to leave it up to Councilor Choi.
Okay. All right, she's still on mute. If I see her mute button come off, we'll know she's engaged. If it doesn't come off, we know she's declined. Okay. You understand the motion that it's been moved and seconded that a report come back to council on the benefits of a 2% annual increase. And inflation rate, again, from the statistics, the inflation rate really peaked and started climbing up in the last quarter of 2021. Up until then, it was in the first of the year, we were looking at a very low inflation rate at times of under 1%. So it certainly, we got in reading the news headlines, we all read about the supply management difficulties, and it certainly affected the price and the price of oil as well. Anyway, yes, Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I think the time to make a decision on that is once we get the report. I'd like to see what options Jill comes up with, and I'd hate to see this defeated at this stage. It's just something that we can consider. At that time, you can vote against it if you so choose.
Yeah, and thank you, Mary Gay, and I certainly agree with you. I do share Councillor McGill's sentiments that it is our job to make difficult decisions as a council, and we must make difficult decisions. That being said, it is asking staff for a recommendation, and it is, again, as I mentioned, a type of actuarial analysis of what it could be. Kristen, I would be amiss not to ask you as our treasurer for input in this. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because you will be, if this motion passes, you'll certainly be one of the partners in the discussion. Could I give you the floor?
Sure. Every few years we do a salary review, or in the past, council's committed to a salary review every few years. So that might be a good jumping point to change procedures going forward, but I'm happy to work with whatever council wishes for now. It's easy enough if I know ahead of time what to aim for in the budget, but I try and manage the reserves effectively enough that we could, make adjustments like that if required after the fact.
Okay, thank you. And you certainly do manage our reserves effectively, and I certainly I compliment you for that, Kristen. It does, moving pots of money around does help at times, and it certainly helps our taxpayers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last call. The chair will call the motion. This is an open vote, Jill? I don't believe a request has been put forth, nor perhaps does it need to be. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All against? Motion is carried. Okay. 9:16, we're not doing too badly. Kristen, if you could walk us through the benefit program renewal, is your next recommendation that is put before us, and I believe you might be the spokesperson for this.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a fairly routine report that we bring each year. Jill and I met with our benefits administrator, and he outlined our new rates. We're self-funded. It's called ASO Administration Services Only. So we are funding our own pot of money, for lack of a better term. So we are, that is performing very well right now. We'll have they're recommending a slight increase of 2% in costs. And he also mentioned that our union and non-union benefits have become a little different. And typically for most municipalities that he works with, they are usually kept the same. So just a recommendation to even that out. So it falls within actually a little bit lower than what I had budgeted for, at an increase of about $200, $210 a month.
Okay, thank you. And that would bring the two in harmony with each other. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Council, questions are directed to Kristen through the chair. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that the treasurer's recommendation be accepted. Councillor Scholdice, Councillor Choi. Last call for discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Kristen, thank you very much for your efforts in that. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Greg, you've had a busy day, but we've got a recommendation here. And could you apprise council of it and your thoughts behind it, sir?
I can, and I just have to quiet my dogs first.
Yeah, that's one of the best sounds I've heard all night there.
Sorry, and through you, Mary Ellen. I think my report's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm certainly available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we'll certainly open it up to the floor. The council approved the purchase of a 10-foot finishing mower, turf tire set, broom, and spray kit. Couple of questions. Is this a single-use apparatus, Greg, or can it be used for any secondary functions? I'll start the questions off. I apologize, council, but came right up.
Through you, Mayor, to you, are you speaking of the trackless machine itself?
Yeah, yes.
So the trackless machine itself. I apologize.
Well, it's okay.
It comes with different attachments. So, you know, the ability to use a piece of equipment that we specifically have used for sidewalks in the past, now we're going to be using it in facilities and rec to cut lawn, and also for, you know, to purchase the brooming attachment for it, as well as the spray kit, will allow us to sweep some of our transitions and some of our sidewalks, etc., in the hamlet. So it is a combined purchase with both departments getting together to try to use a piece of equipment that you know, we don't want sitting there for 6 months of the year. And if you remember, that particular piece of equipment is we just purchased at you know, about $100,000.
Okay, questions to Greg through the chair? Yes, our tractor specialist here, Councillor McGill, followed by Councillor Scholdice, and he has equipment experience as well.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Mayhew.
Mark?
Through the mayor to Greg, I see tank and spray kit. Are we allowed to, what are we allowed to spray? I thought we weren't supposed to spray.
I think there is a high concentration.
I could answer that quickly. Yeah. Spraying water, so that's all we would be spraying.
Yeah.
You can't spray herbicide.
No, this is just really to keep the dust down from the sweeper itself when the trackless is used as a sweeper.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay, and Mike, go ahead. I think I saw your hand there.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just given that we have local businesses that sell lawnmowers, I'm just wondering why we're not tendering this.
Yeah, I did notice a single tender. Yeah, Greg, is it, there's no doubt a reason for that? Is it because of the particular functions it provides, or what?
No, and through you, Mayor Ellen, this particular project, the reason it's at council right now, I could have, with the new procurement policy, we could have processed this without council's approval, as long as the budget number was within the approved number of $30,000. I have put in my report, the reason it's in front of council is because it is different from the approval that was given in the first place. So we are looking to readjust a little bit of money here. We're not buying a single unit. We're trying to utilize a piece of equipment that we already have and set it up so that it can cut open spaces in facilities and rec, which cuts back our particular cutting time to 50%, which will allow our staff to get out and weed more gardens, if you want to put it that way. The other thing it allows is the Public Works Department to purchase this broom that they wanted to purchase for a long time. And this is also consistent with the amount of pressure that we received from council as well as the general public with regards to weeds, not just on sidewalks, but weeds down our street lines. So, you know, especially in Glencoe, where they had put concrete and as roads for many years, there are joints, and all those joints produce weeds. So this was an opportunity to try to address the issues that we had in front of us, and at the same time utilize a piece of equipment that we do have. And really, when it came to the procurement policy, I wouldn't have to tender this. I could have just got quotes and purchased this without bringing it back to council. So the reason it's there tonight is because it is a little bit different than the original allocation that was approved by council.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Yes,
Follow up, Mayor
follow-up
Mayhew.
question. Yes, certainly follow up. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I guess I will ask this slightly differently then again, because I don't think I got an answer. Is there only one company that can supply this, or why are we not tendering it?
Okay, Greg, if you wish to answer that, or if you can.
Yeah, and through you, I mean, it certainly is noted in the report that these attachments are specific to the trackless machine. So, you know, when you have that particular machine, it's used by many municipalities with all types of implements. So the single sourcing of this was certainly possible within the procurement policy, but you know, like I said, I'm bringing it back because it's different than the original proposal that was presented and approved as part of the budget.
Okay. Okay, and again, Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Storms. So I had a chance to peruse the website for Trackless, and I looked at the different attachments, and I understand that we had put about $30,000 into the budget for a mower, which would have been a standalone piece of equipment. As a result of the fact that this is an attachment, which is frequently less money than a standalone piece, are we getting more bang for our buck out of this mower? I don't cut grass at all, ever. I avoid it at all costs. I have a 12-year-old, she does it. So is this something where we're getting a larger, like 10 foot in comparison to 6 foot or 60 inches? I think that's what my lawnmower is. So is there something where we're getting more bang for our buck in this situation because we're not buying a standalone piece?
Through you, Mary Ellen, to Councillor Kyle, yes. I mean, there's no doubt that that was, you know, what both departments talked about. And, you know, the idea of utilizing this machine, it cuts a bigger swath. There's 50% savings. I mean, even to cut Project 2000 with the existing equipment we have takes pretty close to 7 hours, you know, for one staff to cut that piece of property. This will knock that in half. We also have large spaces at a lot of our other areas, including places like Simpson Park, etc. So this is where this unit will go. And then, you know, as part of this purchase, we were, you know, because the mower was only $19,000 and not $30,000, we were able to try to work this broom into the Public Works Department. So you effectively have two departments that met and came up with this proposal to maximize the money that was approved by council. And really, if you know, if I didn't have the spray kit attached, it would have all came in under $30,000. But you know, it was important to have the spray kit. So when we do transitions from our gravel roads to the hard surface roads of the county, or you know, our hard surface roads to gravel roads, that we keep the dust down and that type of thing, and keep the roadway safe for, you know, people driving on the roads when we're, you know, creating dust, etc. So you know, it was believed by the group that we should include this as the whole package. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a very efficient purchase. It allows us different pieces of equipment, and at the same time utilizes a piece of equipment that we have, you know, sitting there for 6 months of the year.
Okay, thank you, Greg, very much. Council, I think I'm going to call one more opportunity for a councillor to ask a question. Seeing none, we'll move on. If the questions have been asked, our operations manager has defended his position. We will call the question. Kristen, just before we go, you have again moved some monies around, and there's no effect on our levy with regards to this. You have it covered by moving some money from the Glencoe garage improvements. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Council, all in favor of the recommendation of the
Has
operation?
anyone moved the motion?
No, they haven't. Gosh, I thought it had been.
I'll move the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, for clarifying that. And seconder for that. Amy, thank you very much. Councillor Choi. And now we'll call the question, Mark. All in favor of the recommendation, please raise your hand. All opposed? Noted. Thank you very much, Council. Moving on, Council, number 9. Notice of motion. I don't believe there are any. And number 10, correspondence and petitions. I have none. Unfinished business. We have some items that we want to bring to the from the consent agenda. Out of 10 items on the consent agenda, 7 were asked to be moved. So we'll do this with some efficiency. 5D, the resolution from the Township of Limerick regarding the gypsy moth. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I would. Yeah, I think this is something I can get behind for the Township of Limerick and support. I think all of you know the impact the gypsy moth infestation has had on our community the last few summers. I'd like to make mention that at Roma this past January, the question was asked whether the province would be creating a provincial framework to help manage current infestations and provide annual forest health and pest forecasts to municipality. The reply back from Honorable Greg Rickford was that hoping to make an announcement with a more specific plan and response very soon. Understands that this is an issue and the government will continue to look at mitigation measures. I think we got the response to that in the consent agenda this meeting, and it really says nothing, so I'm disappointed. But then again, I will definitely support this for the Township of Limerick. I know their struggle. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, just for efficiency, will you move that that resolution be supported?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. A seconder for that, please. Yes, Councillor Scholdice. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor of supporting the resolution, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion is carried. 5E and 5F, Krista, they are in relationship to the idea of dissolving the Ontario Land Tribunal from Mallory Town and Halton Hills. Would you like to speak to 5E and 5F? Perhaps we can do them collectively.
Yes, please. So what's happening in these situations is we will come up with a plan and it will be approved by the province. And then a developer may come in and request something different than what our plan suggests, and it can go up to a tribunal of non-elected officials who don't know our community and make a decision that doesn't fit what we need or what we would like. So ultimately, this is just asking for it to be removed. It had already been removed at one point and then brought back with no real desire to see it come back. So it was very confusing as to why it would return. Except that it benefited the developers. So perhaps they were the ones that suggested it be brought back. Anywho, the point of my request to have it come forward is that we support these different municipalities and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario who have also brought this forward.
Okay, thank you. Council, I think we'll deal with this separately because bylaws may have to be enacted to make it easier for staff. 5D or 5E rather, is Mallory Township, are those supporting the resolution? Krista, will you make that a motion? And a seconder for that, please? Councillor Scholdice. Questions? Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Well, I see this differently. I still think the Ontario Land Tribunal is a good idea because I think there's something like 175 acres of farmland lost every day in Ontario. And if this was done away with, local councils could approve things that might make that situation get even worse. So I think there needs to be somebody that will basically enforce the provincial rules on that kind of thing.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Cowell, a rebuttal for that.
So this this recommendation actually speaks more so to the fact that we've come up with a plan, and our plan is similar to the county, and it would say we don't want farmland changing into developments, and that gets approved by the province. And then what'll happen, and this is happening a lot in the Greenbelt. I was at a conference actually virtually last summer, and what was happening is the Greenbelt, they were constantly taking very productive farmland, and these developers were going to the tribunal and having it converted to future residential. And so the opposite is actually happening as a result of this tribunal. It's not that the municipality necessarily wants to see this urban sprawl, it's that the developers want to, because they've purchased this farmland with the hope of being able to convert it into homes, which is much more profitable.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll do these separately. Resolution of Mallory Town to dissolve the land tribunal has been moved and seconded. There's no other questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, motion's carried. And 5F, resolution of Halton Hills to dissolve the Ontario Land Tribunal as well. Questions? Is there a mover and a seconder first? Yes, thank you, Councillor Cow. Seconder? Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Bartlett. Okay. Been moved to dissolve, moved and seconded that the resolution to dissolve the land tribunal be accepted. Any questions? All in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. All opposed to this motion? Motion is carried. 5G, Mark, resolution for Township of Clearview regarding funds for bridges and culverts. Would you like to speak to this?
Just very briefly, they're just asking for more provincial funding for bridges and culverts in rural municipalities, I believe. So I'd like to move that we support that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Good. Deputy Mayor Wilkins. We can always use more money. Discussion? All in favor of supporting the resolution? Motion is carried. Christina, we're back to you. Resolution Town of Bracebridge regarding insurance. I think that might have been you, Krista, was it? Okay, go ahead and speak to that if you wish.
As we heard in our budget process, the insurance increase is expected to be somewhere around, I think it was 17%, or at least that's what we budgeted for. So this motion is taking a look at it and hoping that the Attorney General of Ontario can help with this situation about outrageous insurance costs that are being impacted by, that municipalities are being impacted by. So I will move that we support this.
Okay, a seconder for that, please. Is there a seconder? Calling once. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, thank you. All in favor of supporting the resolution in regards to insurance? All in favor? Motion's carried. If my notes are correct, Martin, I think we've got you on 5A and 5J. Planning Act updates. Did you wish to speak to that, Martin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. In regards to the fire service agreement, the letters, I think everybody's read them, so they're self-explanatory. What I'm looking for is that we would do the same thing as what as what Don Euphemia has done, and send a letter to Brooke Elveston that we are not in agreement with their recommendation. And I don't know if we need a motion for that or not, but that's my recommendation.
And the chair would feel more comfortable, Martin, if you did make that a recommendation, and that way it's endorsed by council and staff could proceed with that letter. And I think it would have more punch. Okay, will you make that motion?
Yes, I will, Mayor
Okay.
Mayhew.
And is there, and of course, it's the application of a grant they received for renovation was not applied to the apportionment of the individuals involved. And that's what we're concerned about. Councillor McGill, I saw your hand up. Were you seconding that? Okay, thank you. Okay, I just had to question you on that, Mark. I wasn't sure whether it was a comment or seconded, but thank you for seconding that. Questions? Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I talked to Frank Nemchek, the deputy mayor of Brook Elvingston today, and I think we can get this changed. So we will only be paying our share of the net cost after the grant comes off. And I believe he said they're having a meeting tomorrow night. So if our staff could send that letter electronically to Brook Elvingston tomorrow before they have their meeting, that would be great.
Okay, I see Jill nodding her head, and with her efficiencies, I'm sure it'll be done. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of endorsing the letter? Please raise your hand, council. I can't see some of you there. Good. All in favor, unanimous. And Martin, I may be wrong in this, but did you want to speak to the Planning Act update and changes, or are you okay there?
No, I didn't ask for that.
Okay,
sorry.
that's fine then. Good. I think everything has been done. We have, I think we're through that. I think we've got them all. County Council and conference updates. There's no committee reports or anything like that. I think we can go by that. Announcements, Council, are there any? Yes, Mark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd just like to mention that as of March 1st, the COVID passport system is ending in Ontario. And I've asked our staff about that. I wondered if we had to do anything to end it in Southwest Middlesex in our municipal buildings, like for example, at the hockey arena. And I was told we don't have to, so I support that. I think we're just a little municipality, so we just should just take the province's lead. Even maybe if some of us don't totally agree with that it should be done at this time, there's no point in us doing something more restrictive than what the county would allow. And I'm hoping that our emergency, let me think, what is that committee called? Emergency Management Committee?
Yep.
Yes, Alan's on that, and Mary Gay and Krista and Amy. I hope when they're meeting, they would consider removing the stipulation that contractors working for us have to be vaccinated, because I'm afraid that might make certain things cost more money than it would otherwise. And I can't see the point in continuing with that once the vaccine mandate has ended.
Okay, thank you for speaking to that, Councilor McGill. I know that we like to be in coordination with the province and in step with the province on this. We have confidence in some of their decision making, not all of it, but some of it we do, and we'll certainly take that. Yes, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, just through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor McGill, like we'll process this information as we usually do when we hear from the province. We've certainly heard on the radio and on the news of what they propose the direction to be. When we receive that officially, we certainly will process that information as we've done for the last 2 years through COVID. And I'm sure that Jill will want to have an emergency committee meeting when that information is brought forward. So at this particular point, all we know is what the Premier has said in the news, and typically we do get that information sent to us by the province. Officially, we haven't got that yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. We'd like to act on a directive as opposed to what we hear on the media. But I'm sure that'll be forthcoming, Mark. And I know you're concerned in the various elements, how it affects Southwest Middlesex. We've chatted on that, but thank you for bringing that up. Are there any further announcements? Yes, Councillor Scholdice, go ahead. Oh, Mike, you're on mute there. Just hit your mute there. We've all done it many times.
I thought I would remember that. Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'd just like to remind everybody that there is another vaccination clinic at the Glencoe Fire Hall on Monday, February the 28th. And on behalf of council, I'd just like to thank the fire department for holding this, as well as doing the setup and cleanup.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mike, that's a good point. Yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. On that note, Councillor Scholdice, myself and the mayor and Councillor McGill have been volunteering at every one of those vaccine clinics to date. So anytime any one of the other councillors feel like they'd like to volunteer, it'd be most welcome. I'm sure just contact Jill. Thank you.
Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. And thanks, Mike. Any other announcements? Council, the mayor is going to take a privilege of just filling you in on, and it is an announcement, so to speak. At that last vaccination clinic, I had a gentleman approach me, Duncan McVicker, and it was regarding the Mosa number 12 school. And I advised the administration of this conversation, and in the Ward 3 councillors, I brought it to their attention as well. And they probably know Martin and Mike probably know more about the history of this Mosa number 12 school than I do. But just in brief, there evidently was an agreement when the Mosa 12 club utilized that as a community center. There was an agreement where they did not pay property taxes. And I'm not sure, Kristen may know whether there was a formal agreement written or whether in those days it was just a gentleman handshake or a club handshake, that if the school was ever sold, the money would go to charities. And Mr. McVicker gave me some documentation, which I'll forward to Kristen. And the school building was sold, and $50,000 went to 4 Counties Hospital Services Foundation. $5,000 went to St. Vincent de Paul, and $3,080.56 went to the Salvation Army. And so I think that the members of the Mosa 12 Club should be congratulated for that. And Martin, you know the history of this to some extent. I'd be amiss not to ask you.
Well, Mayor Mayhew, I think you pretty well pointed everything out. Obviously, it was a local organization, and we have exempt their taxes the same as Tate's Corner School for a number of years. And I agree with you, Mayor Mayhew. I applaud Duncan McVicker and the residents in the area for their generosity.
You bet. Thanks very much. But it's a good news story, Council, and I wanted to share it with you. Okay. Before we go into closed session, we shuffle the agenda a bit, that the bylaws be approved as recommended. Would there be a motion to that effect? Councillor Bartlett, seconded by Councillor Scholdice. Discussion. All in favor of approving the bylaws as recommended by staff? Carried. And we need a motion to go into a closed session at what time is it? It's 9:47. Moved by Mark, seconded by Martin. All in favor? Deputy Mayor, you've been busy tonight. You've got the gavel again.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mayhew.